Hello everybody, my name is Zeke. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February and March. Usually I kind of do this every month, but I have not been reading quite as much as usual, so I had to kind of make the executive decision to combine so I would have more to talk about. And I'm okay with the amount that I read. I don't think it's really a big deal that I haven't been reading as much. Obviously, I would love to have all the time in the world to read, but just because I don't doesn't mean that I can't still enjoy reading and talk about the books that I am reading. I have been able to read some really, really great books that have really stuck with me and will stick with me, and so I'm very happy about that. And some of the books I've read have been a little longer, so just all things that I've kept in mind to kind of, it's okay that I didn't read as much as I usually do, and I still was able to read a lot. And so I have 7 books to talk about, and I think that I covered a pretty good variety. I'm continuing with that. I think I've really made it a goal to branch out a lot, read a lot of different stuff, and I think I've really been able to succeed with that, as you'll see. So first, I'm actually going to talk about, I guess I'll talk about one after the other, but I read 2 books in a series this 2-month span, which is kind of crazy. I feel like I never really continue on with series right after I read a book. And I did have a break between them, but still I think the fact that I was able to read these like basically pretty close together was very nice and really helped me get even more out of it than maybe I would have otherwise. And that's the 3-Body Problem series by Sijin Liu, and I read the first book and the second book, The Dark Forest. And I think this is a really, really interesting series. There's one more book I have to read, so obviously I can't speak to the whole, but it does a really, really good job of taking like a very like basic story structure, I guess, or not a basic story structure, but basic trope of this alien invasion and really bringing it to places that you don't expect and where you don't really know where it's going. And I think that, especially in the first book, which was my favorite of the 2, I gave this 4 stars. There's a lot going on. We're shifting timelines. We're set at the beginning during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and we're following this like older generation, only one woman, but like this older generation. Then we're in the future, and or in the present, and we're following a more real-time discovery of what's going on. And there's some really cool technological and like alien stuff going on, but at the same time, I think this relationship to the past timeline really drew me in, and getting to see kind of the development of everything that's going on over time, but not in a chronological way. I just think the way that it was kind of set up and the way that these 2 timelines finally merged together was just fascinating. I was really invested in everything that was going on. My only like critique, not really critique, it's not a 5-star because I don't think like there was anything particularly incredible about like the writing or the characters. Like nothing there really would like propel it to like one of my favorite books ever, but I really did enjoy. I think the plotting in this is very, very good. The world building for these aliens is phenomenal and super, super interesting. However, I didn't like the second book as much. I still enjoyed it. It really goes in kind of a strange direction, I would say, but very interesting. There's some moments in this book that I think like absolutely blew me away. I think it's very dark. The idea of this dark forest that you kind of learn about what that's really talking about later on in the book is very depressing, and there's a lot of like philosophical, like deep stuff going on that I think is very, very it's moving, but it's also kind of hard to read, and it makes you feel kind of depressed. I definitely had a moment after this book where I was like, that was definitely very dark. But I think at the same time, there was a lot of stuff in here that I was a little iffy on. I think the first half of the book is a little weird pacing-wise. I don't know. I just felt a little out of it. And I think the very end, I get why it ended the way it did. And I'm interested to see how it'll continue on. But it felt a little anticlimactic considering, like, I'd say about 50 to 100 pages before like something really big happened, and it was just kind of weird pacing wise. I don't know, that could just be a me thing. And also there is some weird, I would say pretty like sexist stuff in the first half. That's at least how it read to me, that I really didn't love and I thought was kind of really difficult to read, and this is from the perspective of the main character, so as we get like these like really, I think, sexist ideas from the main character, it kind of made it very hard for me to really want to root for him, and so that kind of took down my enjoyment of it. So I'm giving it a 3-star, kind of in the middle. There were a lot of things I really liked, but also I had a bunch of issues with it. So I don't really have anything else to say other than that, but I definitely want to continue on, see how it ends, because at this point I have no idea where we're going. But just really interesting, and this really helped broaden the world of the first book as well. Next, I have to talk about a book I really enjoyed, had no idea what I was getting into, and that's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino. This is a very experimental book, very critically acclaimed, but very strange. It's kind of hard to describe the plot of this book because it isn't just one plot. The whole idea is that we're having a bunch of fragments of different stories within the story, and the whole book revolves around kind of going from one story to another. There's connections between them. There's this kind of world outside of these stories we're reading, where the character is experiencing these stories and is reading these stories. So it's very like meta. It's very, there's lots of like layers of like people in the book and stories within stories, and it's just incredible. I mean, it's like unlike anything I've ever read. I don't think there's anything quite like it. I think also another aspect of it that really stands out is the writing. The main character is like called the reader, and so it's kind of like an insert character. There's a lot of stuff going on, very weird, very hard to describe, but I'd say if you're looking for something like really experimental, kind of strange, but also very good and very interesting, like you get into all these stories and you never reach that like point that you really want to get like satisfaction out of it, but they're all very interesting beginnings of stories, and it's just a really fun book to read, and I feel like I only understood about like half of it. Like I feel like there's got to be like people who like reread this book and like get all these like hidden meanings out of everything that's going on, and I feel like I only grasped like the surface level of it, and I would definitely want to reread it at some point, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 star, but I could definitely see that if I reread it going up to like 5-star, I could see this becoming like a favorite book of mine. I just feel like I would have to like read it a bunch of times to fully grasp everything, but really incredible, and very glad I picked this up, and now I want to read other books from this author. But I have no idea what to expect because this was such a strange book. I don't know what his other books are like, but it made me very excited to kind of read his other stuff. So I'm very happy I picked this up kind of on a whim. Next is a reread that I don't want to talk too much about. I reread Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. I really love Celeste Ng's other books. I reread this. I didn't like it the first time I read it for various reasons. I just think it's not as good as her other books. There's a lot of very poignant conversations in this book around censorship. In this book, we're in this world where there's this kind of law called PACT, about like protecting American ideals and culture and traditions, and it's very suppressive, and it's a dystopian novel at the end of the day. It's a lot on the nose. I think there's not a lot of subtlety, and it's a YA book. I think it's supposed to be, so I get it. It just is not my favorite thing, and having read her other books, I just love them so much more, and I know how good of a writer she is. So for me, this just isn't my favorite. But I think there's an audience for this. It's just not me. And I would definitely look into it if you kind of like dystopian books. You kind of are okay with that more on-the-nose messaging. It's just when I read books with a political message, I personally like a little more subtlety, so it didn't work amazingly for me. And I would definitely not recommend this as like your first Celeste Ng book to check out, because I don't think it's very indicative of her writing in general. But I'm very excited to see what she writes next. And I don't want to say like this is bad, because I think there's definitely an audience for it. It's just not me. Next, I read a very highly anticipated book, and that was Pines by Blake Crouch. I've read, as you may be able to see behind me there, some other Blake Crouch books, all of his newer books, and I've really enjoyed most of them. I really love Dark Matter and Recursion. I think that's a pretty popular take. Did not love his newest book, Upgrade, but still interesting enough. And I just think what I really love, he writes like sci-fi thrillers, and I think the scientific like ideas, the science fiction aspect is so interesting, and he's a very engaging writer. Like he's not like some like really like beautiful flowery, it's not that kind of writing, but it's very readable. Like you get really sucked in to his writing, to the plots he's writing, And I definitely felt that with Pines. This was something, it's a series, it's a 3-book series. I'd say this is like the other thing from him that like people really say is good. He has a lot of books out there. He's been writing for quite a while, and I think I hear the most about these 3 books, and then the Wayward Pine series. There's a TV show about it, I'm pretty sure too. So pretty well known, and I've been trying to get my hands on a copy through the library forever, and I finally was able to do so. And it was good. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, and I kind of expected that. I didn't think I was going to get another Dark Matter or Recursion, but this was definitely unexpected. The place we ended up by the end was absolutely wild, and it took me by surprise. So, I mean, I guess it did its job in that department. But basically, we're following this like secret agent who wakes up in this town of Wayward Pines, and something's a little off, and you're just following him, and he's goes through the town, stuff happens. I can't give too much away, obviously, because it is a thriller kind of mystery book. But I think that it was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for something a little faster paced, something that was gonna surprise me, and that's exactly what I got. I just think like the whole sciencey bit wasn't as prevalent in this book. I think he really got into that later on, which I saw with these books. Which I saw with the books behind me. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with Wayward Pines. Maybe they're good to just pick up when I need something a little faster paced with like lower expectations, but it was still enjoyable, and I'm still glad I read it, and I gave it like 3.5 stars. So definitely highly recommend if you're looking for that kind of like fast, quick thriller with a surprising twist. Maybe it won't surprise you. I don't read a lot of thrillers, so I was surprised, but it was good. I'm happy I finally got a chance to read it. Next, I have a book that took me completely by surprise, but really shouldn't have, and that's Love by Toni Morrison. I have been making my way slowly but surely through all of Toni Morrison's books. I've been trying to space it out so I don't run out, but even I know even when I run out, like I'll reread all these books and get so much out of them when on reread, because they're so good. Every single Toni Morrison book I've read, I've really deeply enjoyed. Obviously I have my favorites, but I've really enjoyed all of them, and I think this might make it to one of my new favorites. I had no expectations going in. I don't really read kind of blurbs on her books before I pick them up at this point. I just kind of go in blind without expectations and see what I get, and this was absolutely phenomenal. This is a book centered on relationships and love. I mean, it's in the title, but it's not about like traditional love. It's about a lot of passionate relationships, a lot of anger, a lot of rage between generations of this family, the Covey family. It's about this community, this hotel that kind of the patriarch of the family started and ran, and was kind of a central part of a kind of wealthier Black community in the area. And so with that, we get these conversations of class and like the wider community and the hotel. We also get conversations of class with some of the newer characters that are coming in this book. This book is told in a nonlinear manner, in an often very confusing way. You don't always know what's going on, or maybe that's just me, but I think you kind of slowly build this picture of who all these people are. You're basically following 2 main women, I would say, who live in the same house, and you're kind of slowly understanding why the relationship between them is so strained. And it's dark, like it's really dark. There's a lot of really dark conversations that happen, a lot of really dark moments of finding out kind of everything that went on, especially near the end of the book. I wouldn't say this was fun to read because it's dark. Like, I don't know how many times I can say that. It's very, very dark. But I think by the end, you have a very like complete picture, and I don't think it leaves you with like a sense of despair. I wouldn't say it's hopeful maybe, but I think there was just so much nuance in this book, and so much, the relationship between these 2 women in particular, I think is one of the most fascinating relationships I've seen developed, especially just the way she writes really contributes to that. The way that the story is plotted out really contributes to that. And I'm not describing this very well at all. I don't think it's a book that's easily described. This is hard. This is not like an easy just pick up and read book. If you're looking for something that you have to kind of take your time with, really, really, really beautiful writing and kind of gives really complex and nuanced portrayals of class and relationships and love, then pick this up. I would not recommend this as like a first Toni Morrison at all, because I think it is more difficult, but I think it's very, very, very good, and I'm surprised I don't hear this talked about more, because it was really phenomenal and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, the last book I'm going to talk about is actually kind of forgettable for me, and that was Terminal Boredom by Izumi Suzuki. This is a short story collection that is billed as kind of very dark and weird, and I see that. I definitely see that. I think there's like about 7 stories in here, and none of them were particularly uplifting. I'll give it that. But at the same time, I'd say I read this like not that long ago, and I'd say about half of it has stuck with me, so I think that's a very big indicator of kind of how I feel about this book. I don't think that any of the stories were particularly memorable. I think there were some I liked more than others, sure, but some of them had like really interesting ideas. I feel like a lot of them were very similar, had similar messages, so it kind of started to blur by the end. And also for me, what really didn't work for me was the writing. I just thought that it wasn't anything special. I don't know if that's like something that was like lost in translation or just kind of how the stories are, but it wasn't for me. I don't think I was really drawn in by any of the stories. I don't think anything really spoke to me that much. So I think this is also a sign to potentially read a little less short stories. I feel like, especially lately, the short story collections I've been reading have been okay, but like nothing has really blown me away. So I think I need to kind of shift away just for a little bit, maybe stop getting my hopes up so much with some of these, and see how that goes for a little while. So I gave it like 3 stars, and I probably shouldn't even rate it. I don't even know. I have barely any opinions on it, because it really just left no impact on me whatsoever. So those are the 7 books that I read this month. As I said, pretty happy. Obviously not every book was like a winner, but I read some things I'd been looking forward to reading for a while, and also some just really, really good books that I wasn't even expecting. And so I'm happy. I'm happy it's finally spring. Hopefully maybe I'll have a little more time to read in the spring. We'll see. No promises. I can't build up any high expectations, but we'll see where everything goes. And even if I don't, hopefully I will have more opportunity to read some really, really good books like these past 2 months. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.